So what did your practice look like in this particular element when you were unaware compared with aware?
I remember quite well, to be honest, being unaware, especially in this strand. Sort of going back all the way to the observation stage, I can remember observing teachers. I wasn't really sure what it was that I was looking for. I wasn't sure what it was that they were doing well. I wasn't sure why they were doing what they're doing. I was just amazed. I think when you first see a teacher teaching and you see the control in the room and you see the learning happening, you're just amazed. You're blinded almost by it. And I was observing a lesson with an assistant head teacher who was the senior mentor at the school I was based in, and the question that he asked me afterwards, and I still remember the feeling I had when he asked me, I was prepared to tell him what I thought had gone well, what I thought was nice. You know, the children came in and sat down, there was a task on the board for them to complete. You know, I thought that was nice. I thought I understood why maybe that was done. It all seemed to go well. But the question that I was actually asked by this assistant head teacher was, so what didn't go well? What could I have done better in my lesson but there? And that really threw me off, to be honest, because I was not expecting to be looking at a lesson by somebody who I viewed it as perfection. I viewed the practitioner as very experienced, as they are. And I didn't expect to be asked what didn't go well, because I didn't think that anything had not gone well. From what I saw, it was a perfect lesson. So I dug and dug and dug, because the assistant head teacher did want feedback. He did want something to go on that maybe hadn't gone quite well. It was difficult for me to be in that position of critiquing somebody that I definitely looked up to so early on in my career. And, you know, I managed to pull out to somewhere that maybe he didn't ask as many questions, because at the start he said something he prides himself on was that he asks everybody in the room a question. So I said, I don't think you asked everyone in the room a question. He said, you're right, I didn't ask everyone in the room a question. And I remember how I felt in that moment, and that it changed my thinking. You know, I hadn't been observing many teachers at that point. I hadn't been thinking about teaching for very long in that context, in the actual environment, and it almost forced me straight away to look at a lesson in a critical manner. I was already evaluating what it was that I'd seen in front of me because of that question that he'd posed to me. I didn't really realise that that's what I was doing, but at the unaware stage I was quite quickly shocked into thinking, oh right, okay, everything that happens here isn't perfect, because you can almost, I think, sit in a lesson observation and think, all right, okay, you know, there's work happening, it seems to be quiet, there's something on the board, the teacher is speaking, the students are listening, but what's the learning objective for the lesson? Is that happening throughout? You know, what didn't go well? What could be better? I think that really is something that's important to develop in your practice. Maybe not something that you get until much later on, definitely through the continuum, definitely not at the unaware stage. But as I said, quite early on, I was blessed to have been asked that question. I think it's not something I would change if I look back on my experience.
Again, I was the exact same. When you're observing the lessons, you're in awe and you're thinking, oh my gosh, you know, this is amazing, you know, and you're making notes and you're thinking, oh, you know, everyone's on task, classroom management as well, they're monitoring the room, and again, it just seems to be perfect. And then but again, that's the unaware stage. When you start to think critically and you start to think deeper, then it's, yeah, you know, oh, maybe you should have done this, or how about trying this, how about doing this? And that was the same for me, where it was a case of, to begin with, I thought, yeah, that looked good, that looked great, yeah, fantastic. And then I'm being asked, well, have you considered try doing this? Have you considered try doing that? And then I thought to myself, no. And it's a case of observing them lessons with someone with 15, 20 years of experience. They could always be better, they can always be improved, and they can always be further refined.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely something that puts you in a good position in moving from unaware to aware, is thinking with a critical lens, looking at those lessons, looking at what is happening in front of you at the observation stage, but definitely when you start taking over your own classes, definitely reflecting, using the PLP, starting to think about what it is that has happened. Is what has happened in that lesson what you wanted to happen? If it was, why? Because you want to make sure that even the successes did not happen on accident. Success still needs to be planned for. If it does happen on accident, how? What did lead them there? If the intention was not met, then again, you need to revisit why. What did happen at that stage? So definitely at the unaware stage, I was not sure how to resolve any of those issues.
So moving from unaware to aware then, what did you do differently then after that conversation with your mentor?
So I was prepared for it, for one, so I was definitely prepared for the question, but I for the observations, for the periods that I was observing, and I observed throughout my placements, to be honest. Even when I was teaching, I was still observing. I quite enjoyed seeing teachers from other departments to see what they were doing. I didn't stay within my department. I wanted to see what an excellent art lesson looked like, or an outstanding IT lesson looked like. And again, I was looking at them with that critical lens now of maybe what didn't go well. There's definitely more that I could have been looking at, at the unaware stage, fully understanding what is going on in the room and why. But at the aware stage, I was definitely more open-minded that what I was seeing was not perfect. Obviously, moving further on down the line, then I understood more about why teachers do what they do, and I could look even further then into the lessons and pick them apart even more.
And of course, a big part of this element as well is about a student teacher's, at this particular threshold, ability to develop innovative approaches, innovative to them in the classroom, so that their impact can be evaluated, analysed and shared. How did that look from unaware to aware? Were sort of new approaches on your radar? Were you able to pick them out? How did that look as you progressed?
So for me, I remember one of the first lessons that I taught, I was given the feedback that I'd just sort of, and I think this is a mistake a lot of people make at unaware, is just giving the question to the room. You're sort of feeling apprehensive about asking the question. What if nobody answers? You don't know anybody's names. How do I know their names? What do I do? I remember asking a question to the room, several times, sort of asking it. Luckily, somebody did answer. It was the same person every time. Obviously, I know now that's not ideal, but at the time I had no idea. So I remember that the feedback was...
And you just want to fill in that awkward silence
as
well.
You just want to move past it, you just want to get past it. What can I do to move past this? So I remember getting that feedback and thinking, well, what is the problem with asking the full room the question? And I was told as well that the school had a no hands up policy. I couldn't quite understand what that meant. Again, I mentioned that in another video that I didn't sort of feel comfortable asking the question because I almost didn't want to show my inexperience. So I didn't really ask the question, what is a no hands up policy? Why is it not okay to ask the full room a question and then hope for the best afterwards? And I think that's definitely something, definitely the unaware stage, but then at the aware stage, you've got to have the confidence to start asking people. You're aware that there is more than what is actually in front of you.